Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So we'll do a little bit of a video here, talking out a bit of a topic that kind of came up as a result of some interesting news events. And it was very funny, and I'm starting off the video here, showing off most recent Instagram post here, a new Brett Favre. You got to pronounce it correctly, of course. I will go through the improper pronunciation for the rest of the episode just to save some time. But the point is that I have this Brett Favre Gold X Factor out of 101 from 2003 Topps Chrome that I added to the collection. It's an encased card. It's actually a very neat card, and honestly, good looking card in person. Although the centering is a little bit off, as you can kind of see from the image. But the point is, it's a nice. It was kind of a fun card to add to the collection. It's one of those things that I kind of enjoy. Now, as I mentioned on the channel before, I do enjoy working on my player collections. I've got my main player collection is Mike Modano, of course. And I've got a few others that I kind of work on. The Brett Favre thing has been kind of fun for me as kind of a little side project where I'll find certain shiny cards, certain inserts, certain cards that catch my eye as far as that's concerned. And that's been kind of the fun for me in terms of building that collection. I've also been able to get a nice patch autograph as far as some other, memorabilia autograph cards. So it's one of those things where I would love to build a little kind of side collection of some very nice and fun Favre cards to go along with that segment of the collection. Now, obviously, there are some happenings as far as Brett Favre is concerned. Everything's kind of being investigated and ongoing. Things can change as we go along, but I do want to acknowledge it. So here is kind of an ESPN article. I'll include a link to it in the description for you. Former Mississippi governor helped Brett Favre obtain welfare funds for University Volleyball Stadium tech show. So obviously there's a lot of, very concerning elements coming to Brett Favre. The reason why I wanted to kind of use this as an offshoot to have a quick discussion with you is that obviously, professional athletes are people. At the end of the day, they really are people, and they're fallible in different ways. Now, this is kind of an open-ended topic. I want to be very clear about this. I'm going to offer my opinion on this, but at the same time, this is not prescriptive. This is, you could 100% disagree with me. You could be 180 degrees diametrically opposed to everything I'm about to say in a moment, and that's perfectly fine. That's completely okay, because at the end of the day, this is a subjective matter. This is really kind of where your comfort zone is on this. And my opinion on this has always been this. Whenever I'm focusing on a player collection or even a sub-themed collection, because I'm not trying to collect every Brett Favre card in creation, I'm focusing on very specific cards that I think would be fun for me to add to that segment of the collection. None of what's happened here as far as this is concerned in this news story and this ongoing, developing situation with that, none of that has really dissuaded me in any way, shape, or form. I would still go out and buy another Favre card tomorrow if it was the right card that I felt fit the theme and collection that I'm building and if the price was right. As far as I'm concerned, one thing has nothing to do with the other. And the reason why I say I want to make sure I'm clear about this is that if you're the exact opposite of that, that's perfectly valid position to have. That is 100% valid. I respect it, and I have no issue with it. And to be clear, there are lines that cannot be crossed. And I'll give you a different example that maybe will help illustrate this a little bit as well. Whenever you're building a collection, and this is kind of an overarching theme for me when it comes to collecting in general, and I just want to be clear about this, collecting in general. When it comes to collecting in general, my belief is that if you're building a collection and you are going with a certain theme, and this is different from, say, building a set. If you're building a set, a complete set is whatever the amount of cards are in the set. Like, that's kind of how it is. But if you're doing a player collection, you can choose. Oh, I want to try to get everything. Okay, fair enough. Good luck with that, with one of ones and all that in the system, but best of luck to you. But if you're operating in the space where you're building a player collection, that means you do have some latitude. It means you can develop what the criteria is. But at the same time, you can also make decisions about when you're going to collect something and when you're not. I've got my Mike Modano collection. That's my primary collection. I've got a Jamie Benn collection. It's a bit of a side collection. I'm working on this Brett Favre thing, and it is very thematic. Like, it's these various refractors, certain memorabilia cards. I'm being very picky. That isn't to say I wouldn't add some other cards to it, but I'm being very picky in terms of what I'm adding. This card I certainly thought was worthy. I like the card. I like the aesthetic. I like the look of it. And obviously, the stuff that's going on with Brett Favre right now, personally, is not great. It's not a good thing. And I would never sit here and try to convince you that, oh, Brett Favre is a great person. He's misunderstood. This is a mistake, whatever. I'm not defending the guy. There is no way, shape, or form where I'm going to try to do that. I'll let the courts work that out, however they're going to work it out in the end. But the point is that it doesn't dissuade me because when it comes to my player collections, I don't collect any of the players that I do collect because they're good people. That is not a criteria for me, but it could certainly be for you. If you say to yourself, hey, I don't want this person to be someone that I'd be having feeling like I have to defend. I don't have to defend Brett Favre. He could be 100% guilty of everything he said, and so be it. And if he needs to go to jail or be fined or whatever the case may be, let justice be served. That has nothing to do with his play on the field for me. I am collecting him because he was the Green Bay Packers quarterback when I started following the Packers. So I do have some good memories associated to games where I watched Brett Favre. I also have some very irritating memories where he threw crippling interceptions that I'm very annoyed about. But the point is that he was a very exciting player to watch, and he is the reason that I follow the Packers today. And that carries over to Aaron Rodgers, who has his own, no, not legal issues, but it's not like Aaron Rodgers is devoid of being questionable in decisions he has made. Again, not on the same level. Just to be clear, I'm not equating the two. But the point is that I've got two different Green Bay Packer quarterbacks who are both flakes, who both have serious issues. And down the road, only history will be able to fully write whether, they're both bad guys, whether one's a bad guy and the other one's just misunderstood. They're both misunderstood. I can't answer to that. The point is, when you're looking at collecting, quarterbacks for this team in the most recent 30 years or so, you've got a lot of things to answer for if that's what you want to do. I don't try to answer for them because at the end of the day, it has no bearing on what I'm doing. That isn't to say, as I said a few minutes ago, that there isn't a line that cannot be crossed. One player collection that I had started, and I still got the cards sitting around in a box somewhere, and unfortunately, I'll never really be able to do anything with them, honestly, because of what happened. And I actually had a jersey that I had purchased years ago pertaining to this. I actually had a little nascent Ray Rice collection back in the day. And I'll quickly give you the background on that just so you understand why. I kind of started following Ray Rice a little bit back in the day because at one point I was able to attend what was known as the International Bowl. So it was it was one of the various college bowls, the infinite number of college bowls that exist now. Obviously, there's even more today. But the International Bowl was a briefly existing bowl game that they actually had at the Sky Dome in Toronto. Today, the Rogers Center, or maybe they've renamed it again. Whatever. The point is, the Dome in Toronto, they had a college football game where they called it the International Bowl. And I actually did get a chance to attend one. And that particular bowl game was Ball State taking on Rutgers. And in that particular game, the MVP of that International Bowl was a young man named Ray Rice. And I got a chance to watch him in person do his thing. And for those of you who are familiar with it and are able to go and look up the history of the International Bowl, go check out, if you get a chance, go check out Ray Rice International Bowl. It was he was the MVP of the game. And it was Rutgers versus Ball State. It was in January of 2008. So I am hitting the Google. So I want to make sure I got that covered. But I am looking that up. But it happened at the Dome. I was there in that game. It was basically the Rutgers taking on Ball State. And it was 52-30. And the MVP to that was Ray Rice. And deservedly so because he, at the time in that game, ran for 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. So you got to understand, I actually got a chance to watch this in person. And it was extremely impressive. And in the end, Ray Rice had himself a good little run in the NFL. Obviously, that came to a screeching halt as a result of his personal activities outside of the game. Not a good look, not a good example. Basically everything. They could have gone, it was bad. It was bad. He physically attacked his then fiance. And it was on video. It was one of those things. You can't come back from it. You can't debate it. You can't argue it. It's one of those things. And it wasn't like he didn't have things going on in his career prior to that, but it was one of those things. After that, he was basically done. The cards, they just sit in a box somewhere. The jersey, I can't really do anything with it. The only thing I could do with it is basically take off the damn numbers, take off the name, and move on. But it's one of those things. It happens. Stuff happens. These are fallible human beings. But I want you to think about this. Just think about this. Ray Rice, as it stands today, would be 35 years old. For a running back, obviously, he'd be past his prime at this point. But the point is, when he basically embroiled himself in this controversy and basically got himself blackballed from the league permanently, it wasn't like a situation where, he didn't potentially have years left in his career had he avoided this issue entirely. It was just kind of interesting the way it worked out. It's very unfortunate. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It happened. But when you get cited and you're caught very clearly red-handed with a domestic violence situation, that's not a good thing. That's a bridge too far. That's not the kind of thing where I'm going to keep collecting their cards. To me, that's an issue beyond that. What Brett Favre did here, again, I'm not downplaying it. I'm not minimizing it. I'm just saying that, like, in the relative scale of things, at the end of the day, it's fraud. I'm good with whatever justice decides to go with as far as is concerned. But people in the NFL have done worse things, is what I'm trying to get at. Now, the reason why like I said, I wanted to have this discussion is because it is a complex situation. I guess it depends mostly on what your tolerance level is for it, what you can accept, what you can't accept. Can you separate the athlete from person, or vice versa, or whatever the case may be? My theory and my thought process has always been, from the beginning and to this day, is that I don't try to equate the person with the athlete. When I look at Brett Favre and I collect his cards, I'm collecting his cards because he was the quarterback of the team at the time that I started following them. I do have good memories associated to Brett Favre, the player. Brett Favre, the person, could be an absolute piece of trash. And it doesn't change the fact that Brett Favre, the player, gave me some fun memories, in addition to some frustrating memories as well, to be perfectly blunt. Same as what Aaron Rodgers will be when his time is done and he finishes. To this point, he hasn't committed anything nearly as egregious as what Favre has been accused of, and what may very well be the case. But the point is that, like, both those quarterbacks have given me moments of frustration, along with moments of joy and elation and enjoyment as a fan. So it's one of those. It's a complicated relationship. But I also don't try to present myself as equating to, like, oh my God, this is so devastating to me personally because this player, let me down, so on and so forth. I don't have expectations of these players as people, because that's always the approach that I've taken. I put a bit of a separation between the player and the person. The person is the individual. They are what they are. They live their lives like anybody else. They can certainly make mistakes and they can do something horrifically wrong, and I can't get past that, and I'm not going to try to defend it. I'm not going to try to condone it. It just is what it is. And like I said, even Mike Modano, who for the most part has done reasonably well in terms of his public profile in the time since, there could very well be down the road that something happens. And I'm not going to suddenly stop collecting Mike Modano cards after 27 years. It'd be a little weird for me to suddenly stop. Of course, there are things that could be so horrific where it's like, okay, well, we'll kind of stop it where it is. Like I said, the Ray Rice thing, I can't condone it. I can't defend it. I refuse to do so. I won't. But it's unfortunate because I started collecting his cards and I was hoping that I would get the chance to do that for some time. And I enjoyed it the brief time that I did get to do it, but he kind of ruined that. He went too far. He went beyond the point that I was able to continue going forward. For Favre, I'm not at that stage right now. Right now, I can still kind of enjoy the collection that I have. If the hobby in turn kind of turns on the guy, fair enough. That's fair play. I'm not going to complain about it or argue about it. I think that it is what it is. And if that's the case, then that's what has to happen. I just kind of wanted to give you some kind of the thought process of that I go through in my mind when something like that's going on. Right now, this is still ongoing. We'll see what happens with Favre going forward and what happens with him in terms of legally and if that has any impact long term on his hobby. And that's kind of where I'm kind of curious. And this is now when I'm going to push it back on you. I'm curious about two things. Number one, do you collect players? If you are a player collector, and maybe a team collector could apply to this as well, but I guess whatever works for you. But if you're a player collector predominantly, I could see this being a bigger issue. Do you ever worry, or is it something where if a player that you're collecting ever was, caught up in doing something like this, or a criminal issue, or a serious issue, would that be something that would throw you off from collecting them? Would that be something that would dissuade you from it, or turn you off the entire endeavor in the first place? Like I said, I put a personal separation between the two. I never try to defend or try to, put myself in the position of trying to defend anything that any of these players do, because I certainly have no control over what they do, and I'm merely a fan of what they did on the field. I can't testify to their personal, conduct or their personal lives or how they conduct themselves after that or even during it. It's one of those things where I don't know them as people, so I can't even pretend that I could ever try to put myself in the shoes to be able to really understand what they are. So it's one of those things where if you try to put yourself that far deep into your fandom, they can certainly leave you room to be disappointed. So I'm curious if that's something you were ever worried about as a player collector. Is there a situation where you've got your own line in the sand where if a player that you're following or collecting or whatever does a certain thing, well, then you're out? what is your line? For me, the Ray Rice domestic violence thing, I think that was too far. So for me, I was done with that collection after that. The Favre situation certainly isn't good, but I'm not done collecting them in terms of that as a result of that right now, just because, like I said, I'm narrow. My scope is very narrow, and I'm collecting it mostly for fun, and I'm still having fun with it. But could he do enough horrible things? If it turns out he's a serial killer, well, maybe then I'm out on that too. Again, there are lines that you can cross, but I'm just kind of curious if you have a line as far as any player collection. If the player disappoints you to a certain degree or does things that you cannot justify or condone, is that grounds for you to stop collecting, or what your situation would be for that? So I'm curious about that, and I'm also curious about, in general, is that something that would concern you? And if you decided to start a player collection, are you worried about that kind of thing? I'd hesitate to be an Antonio Brown collector at this point. Again, I don't think anything he's done necessarily. He hasn't killed anybody as far as I know, but it's one of those things where, it'd be a little tough. It'd be a little tough to start a collection like that, but there might be some interest in it for some folks that maybe you're getting it as a bargain price. So who knows? So I'm curious about those two things. That'd be something I present to you just to ask the question. And otherwise, like I said, I'll leave a link in the description to you if you want to kind of follow the Brett Favre thing. It is a little bit of an odd story, developing still as we speak. And we'll see what happens going forward. But from a player collecting standpoint, unfortunately, it is something you do have to take into consideration because, again, we don't control what these players do. We're fans of them on the field, but we really don't know what kind of people they are off the field necessarily. And I think it would be better and healthier as a fan to never assume that you really know these people that much. Like, this applies to almost any kind of celebrity. They are people. They are prone to the same kind of foibles and flaws that we have as human beings. So it's one of those things, like, just understand it. They just happen to be really good at something. In this case, sports. And maybe just understand that and don't try to overplay it and, try to put them on some kind of a pedestal. And maybe that's the mistake that people make, which is not good in the long run. And it creates these kind of scenarios. Like, I would be horrified if I was someone who was a Brett Favre super collector in the sense of, investing so much time, energy, and money into trying to build this gigantic collection. I've got a nice little collection of some fun cards that I enjoy, but I don't kill myself, building that collection. It's a side collection to my other collections. It's just something that's fun for me. And as long as it remains fun for me, and again, the issues that Brett Favre has don't cross that line, I can continue forward without any issue. But for others, certainly it might be a bridge too far right now. And maybe that's something they wouldn't be able to handle or deal with. Anyway, that's it for me. I apologize. I had to kind of go along in circles to try to really get my thoughts together on the piece. Let me know kind of what you think. I'd be interested to get your take on this. Otherwise, that's it for me. More videos coming up on the channel. We'll do the live stream coming up on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I will also say that we will have a pickup video this week because I did get some fun cards in, including the one I've been showing on the screen this whole time. But I do have another one. I do actually have another Favre card that I'm still going to show off as part of my pickups as well. But some other fun stuff as well. More things coming up on the channel. Otherwise, thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.